let's go ahead and get into the first story tonight. If you did not know, there was a pro-Palestinian protest in Los Angeles the other day. Now, let me tell you what this protest was about. The people there that were protesting, they were protesting outside of a synagogue. And the reason why they were protesting is because there was another real estate event that was happening at a synagogue to sell homes in the West Bank. And I'm telling you this up front because mainstream media is omitting that from this conversation when they discuss that they are disgusted about the protest. Let's go ahead and get into this first clip here. I want to show you. I made a comment here and I said LAPD sits back and allows Zionists to beat pro-Palestinian protesters. This is part of the reason why we need to defund the police. They're corrupt, just like our politicians. Remember, cops support supremacy. What about the black cop? We'll get into this. You're going to see this. Black cops are blue first. I've been saying this for years. I still stand by it. And everyone got to understand that, because you can learn this too if you watch the movie Boys in the Hood, where John Singleton talked about his experience. Boys in the Hood was kind of like his experience that he had growing up in that area, right? So these are protesters here, and the pro-Palestinian protesters are being attacked by Zionists. The police are there. Watch this.
Do something to work. No, you do something. I'm trying to leave the area.
So, as you can see, the police are right there. This gentleman here with the long hair is telling the police, he said, why don't you do something? Obviously, you see that I'm being attacked by this gentleman over here, and the police are just standing there. Now, why is that happening? That is happening because, again, you have to remember which side the police are on. Everybody understand this. The police are not on the side of the pro-Palestinian protesters, just like the police were not on the side of the protesters during the civil rights movement. They are on the side of the establishment. They're on the side of the mayor. Now, the mayor of LA, Karen Bass, obviously she spoke out in support of the synagogue, in support of Israel. So that is the same side that the police are on. Never forget this. The mayor can actually fire police officers. Never forget that. Now, I know some people have pointed this out. There's a black police officer right there. Why isn't he doing anything? Because he is still a cop, and he is blue first, and he is on the side of the establishment. Never forget that. Let's continue on.
We are not going to lie down. We're never going to do something. Come on, try to. Who was it? Come on.
So again, who is the aggressor? Now, how many times have we seen this? So the pro-Palestinian protesters are being smeared as, anti-Semitic and all these other things and violent. But there have been a number of videos where you see that the Zionist protesters are the aggressor. There have been a number of videos that show this, but that is not who the police want to arrest.
Why aren't you guys protecting her? Why aren't you guys protecting her?
Leave the area! Stay right here, little bitch! Come back, little bitch! Get out of here, let's go!
And that's another reason why I continue to tell you that the police are worthless. Another reason. Again, in that video, as you'll notice, did the police officers prevent crime? Did they stop crime? No. They don't really protect you unless you're rich. If you're rich, they'll look out for you. Now, I had to explain that to you because the White House is taking the side of the pro-Zionist protesters. Listen to this. The White House condemns Palestine supporters in LA for protesting a Jewish real estate event selling homes in the West Bank, yet ignores the fact that the event itself is illegal by both domestic and international law. And that's coming from President Biden here. I'm appalled by the scenes outside the Adas Torah synagogue in Los Angeles. Intimidating Jewish congregants is dangerous, unconscionable, anti-Semitic, and un-American. Americans have a right to peaceful protest, but blocking access to a house of worship and engaging in violence is never acceptable. So again, very conveniently, he omits that what they were protesting is another real estate event of them selling homes in the West Bank, which is against the law domestically and internationally. So he leaves that out. Karen Bass is omitting that as well.
Earlier today, we were protesting outside of a real estate event in Beverly Hills that was selling homes in Anglo neighborhoods in Palestine. There was heavy police presence. They were clearly on the side of the Zionists, even being brought water by some of them and giving them fist bumps. The counter-protesters were very violent. They were clearly the agitators in the situation. So I was punched twice today. The first time was by a police officer who ran up behind me and punched me in the kidney and yelled, "Move." There was no kind of warning to it. It just came up and happened. And the second time was I was heading through the protest and a Zionist punched me in the back of my head. So I saw protesters that were being spit at, and there was a woman who was hit with an egg on her hijab. The Zionists were overwhelmingly targeting women. They were using a lot of sexist language and even pushing, shoving, and throwing things at us.
Does that sound familiar? Overwhelmingly attacking the women?
The police were using excessive force. There was a lot of pushing, shoving, punching from the police. They also seemed to be overwhelmingly targeting women that were holding the line. Pro-Palestinian protesters were just outside this event. They were chanting, they were being peaceful, and they were viciously attacked by Zionists and police.
So do you see what's happening here? This is why it's important that you see the other side of the story. This is why that is important. So we can go on to the next image here, because this is what I want you to see. This is what's happening there. Real estate in Israel, the mega event of the year is coming to North America. LA Valley, Thursday, June 20th. You see this? And then there was LA Pico, Sunday, June 23rd. So these were events, again, come and meet representatives of housing projects in all the best Anglo neighborhoods in Israel. Get the most updated info from experts so that you can make your move. Once again, they are selling homes in the West Bank. So nobody is trying to stop Israel from doing what they're doing. Nobody is trying to stop them. That was happening here in the United States. That's not happening over there in Israel. This event took place right here in the US, and the president omits that information. Mayor Karen Bass omits that information. And of course, right here on CNN, you're going to see these commentators, and you're going to see Van Jones also omit that information. Let's go ahead and get into this. Van Jones should be ashamed of himself.
President Biden is condemning Sunday's violent street protests between Los Angeles pro-Palestinian and pro-Israel counter-demonstrators. Protest organizers say they were targeting a synagogue where an Israel real estate event was taking place. Biden said he's appalled by what he saw. He said, quote, intimidating Jewish congregants is unconscionable, anti-Semitic, and un-American.
CNN obtained this video appearing to show two men wrestling on the ground as others kick them. The violence prompted LA's mayor to beef up security at houses of worship around the city. Let's discuss with CNN senior political commentator and former Obama administration official Van Jones. Van, great to see you. I'm curious to get your reaction to these scenes playing out, not just in Los Angeles, but we've seen similar ones across the country.
Well, look, this is unacceptable. As a father who's actually trying to raise my children in Los Angeles, I want to just applaud Mayor Bass, Governor Newsom, and President Biden for speaking up about this. Listen, if you don't like what's happening in Gaza, it's your right to protest. That's not a problem. But you protest a policy. You don't protest a people. When you protest a policy, you go to City Hall and you protest. You go to the Israeli consulate peacefully, you protest. Maybe you go to your elected representative, you protest. You don't bum rush a Jewish neighborhood and run up on a synagogue.
So again, pay close attention to what he's doing here. Notice he's leaving out the information that I just gave you. This is why independent media is so important.
That's not protesting a policy, that's protesting a people. And that is across any line in America, and it has to be called out. And you have to also understand the context here. This is a neighborhood that's already been traumatized. Not just October 7th, which traumatized all Jewish communities, but that neighborhood in particular. Last year, in February, not one, but two Jewish men, Orthodox Jewish men, were gunned down, were shot in two back-to-back hate crimes. So you're dealing with a community that's already traumatized, they're already fearful, and then you go and you do something like this. I have no problem with people protesting policy. You cannot protest a people. That is not a protest, that's a pogrom, and that has to stop.
So again, they weren't protesting a people, they were protesting a real estate event that was taking place at that synagogue. So Van Jones is leaving that information out, and so is CNN, and I'm pretty sure they're doing it on purpose. This is why I cannot stand mainstream media. But let's get back to this point of being traumatized, can we? Because, you know, it's really interesting how they have no problem identifying certain communities as dealing with trauma, when there are communities in this country that have been traumatized for decades, fam, not since a year ago. But you never see that same type of passion. You never see them come forward. You don't see the mayor, the governor, the president, other world leaders coming together and say, we must help these people. We must help this community. You don't see it. And Van Jones is a tool. He's a tool. I'm going to show you what he used to be before he decided to take the money. And you'll see how they get activists to sell out. So Van Jones is a tool. Van Jones, as long as he sits there and nods his head and he's pro-Israel and he's pro-establishment, every now and then they'll let him throw in a couple of progressive lines here and there. But the reality is, at the end of the day, Van Jones is establishment tool. That's why he's allowed to be there.
Let's talk about the policy. Let's talk about how the Biden administration, how the president's handling the policy, Van. How do you see it? Where does he need to improve on this?
Well, listen, I think that the president is in a tough position because the base of the party is very concerned about these images that we keep seeing from Gaza, and he wants to take a strong stand on behalf of human rights for everybody. That's Joe Biden. At the same time, I think it's a little bit naive for some people to think that if Israel would suddenly stop doing what it's doing, that rainbows and bunnies and sunshine would break out over the Middle East and it would all be fine. The hostages have to be returned. If you can call for a ceasefire on both sides. Hamas is still firing its rockets. They still have hostages kidnapped. So this is a complex issue, but here's what's not complicated. Politics can be complicated. Geopolitics can be really complicated. How you treat your neighbors, how you treat people in your community is not complicated. You don't run up. I haven't seen any Jewish people running up on mosques with.
Let me pause here. So do you see what's happening, right? Right. So this is what Van Jones is paid to do. So now it went from the videos that I showed you of the peaceful protests to, you don't go and run up on these people in their neighborhood. I didn't see anybody running up on anybody in the neighborhood. I didn't see any of the pro-Palestinian protesters running up on people in that neighborhood. But I did see Zionist protesters running up on the Palestinian people while the police stood right there and did nothing and let them get attacked. What a mess.
Israeli flags, if they did that, I'd be denouncing that too. There's certain things you don't do. It is a red line. If you want to be a part of a protest and they say, we're going to go to a Jewish community center, we're going to go to a mosque, we're going to go to a Jewish restaurant, that's not a protest. That's a pogrom. That's an anti-Jewish bigoted act. If you want to be a part of a protest, let's go to a mosque. Let's go and harass the Muslims. That's not a protest. So we've got to get clear in our country what is a fair protest about policy, you can agree or disagree, and what's going after people, human beings, terrifying moms, grandmas, children who are trying to be a part of a neighborhood. The Jewish neighborhoods in LA are well known. Nobody is confused where they are. So if you show up there wearing kaffiyeh, you show up there with your face covered, you show up there chanting river to the sea, that would be just like a white person running up with a Confederate flag in Harlem. You're not.
Pause. Now he is trying to compare a kaffiyeh to the Confederate flag. Does anybody see the problem with this? Number one, they don't have the same history or the same meaning. Once again, this is mainstream media trying to condemn a kaffiyeh. And last time I checked, Confederate flags aren't condemned. I lived in the South. And every time I go back south to visit my family, there are lots of Confederate flags. So this is Van Jones and Team Blue calling for more censorship and calling for more suppression of speech. Don't think this is anything different. That is exactly what is happening. So you mean to tell me under this administration, under these so-called progressive, Van Jones claims to be so-called progressive or whatever, these are the same people that are now trying to silence people. These are the same people telling you what you can say, what you can't say. And I said it before again, you ain't got to agree with what people say. But the thing is, if you say you're a free speech absolutist, that means people can say whatever they want. That doesn't mean they won't have consequence, but that means they can say whatever they want. Now a kaffiyeh is a problem. Where did that come from? That came from the ADL. Never forget that Jonathan Greenblatt was on Morning Joe and he said the kaffiyeh was a problem. It was threatening. Now they're trying to tell you what you can and cannot wear. This is 2024, fam. 2024. They're trying to send us back to like the 50s. This isn't happening under Donald Trump's administration. This is happening under Joe Biden's administration. Both parties want to censor you. Both parties want to tell you what you can and cannot wear. This is unbelievable. Unbelievable. So he compared a kaffiyeh, which is a scarf worn by Palestinian people, people who are oppressed and occupied. He compared that to the Confederate flag. The white Confederates are not oppressed. They're not occupied. What is Van Jones talking about? Then when it was really the kicker is he said it at the end. He said, that's like bringing a Confederate flag to Harlem. Have you been to Harlem recently, Van Jones? Because the last time I went to Harlem, it was hella gentrified. Hella gentrified. People just say stuff. Just say anything. And if people haven't been there, you don't even know. That is the embarrassment or one of the embarrassments of the week, comparing a kaffiyeh to a Confederate flag.
Trying to start a conversation. You're trying to start a fight. Stop doing that. Don't do that. We don't want more violence. We don't want more fear. We don't want more terrified people. We've got to be able to come together as a country. If either side had an easy answer, it'd have been solved. I'm less concerned about the politicians now. I'm concerned about the people in my community in Los Angeles moving in a direction that is more and more dangerous, more and more scary, more and more destructive. The Jewish community does not need to have people doing those types of things. It's not helping anybody in Palestine, but it's making America a much less safe place for everybody.
Oh, now it's in Palestine. I thought Palestine didn't exist according to you guys over at CNN and MSNBC and said there was no such place. So it's all over the place. It's horrible. This is a guy who got paid very well and sold out. and I'll show you what Van Jones used to say. I'll show you who Van Jones used to be, because this was Van Jones in 1993, back when he had dreads, back when he was so-called activist, back when he was saying the establishment is a problem. This is who Van Jones used to be. Here's an oldie, but a goodie.
Now, if students can do that in 1960, the students can do that in 1970, the students can do that in 1985 and 86, in 1993, when we have the United States government building a death camp, a concentration camp for black people who have done nothing wrong but get sick and want justice. That's all they've done wrong. If we can't close that death camp, if this generation cannot prevent another Japanese American internment in our lifetime, we should all get haircuts and go get regular jobs and give it up. Now, if students can do that in 1960, the students can do that in 1970, the students can do that in 1985 and 86, in 1993, when we have the United States government building a death camp, a concentration camp for black people who have done nothing wrong but get sick and want justice. That's all they've done wrong. If we can't close that death camp, if this generation cannot prevent another Japanese American internment in our lifetime, we should all get haircuts and go get regular jobs and give it up.
And that's exactly what he did. He decided to get a haircut and get a regular job and give it up. That was Van Jones in 1993. So I don't know if he was one of those activists or a pretend to be activist is trying to infiltrate a movement, which we do get those, or if he really was a legitimate activist and somebody came up to him with some money and said, hey, you can make a lot more money. You have a great voice if you decide to come over to the woods this way. They target activist community people too. They target those people. Corporations will target people in the activist community that have a powerful voice and get them to sell out like that. So that's what happened to Van Jones. So now you want to criticize people who are fighting for Palestinian liberation. You want to criticize those people. You want to call those people, a problem and say that the kaffiyeh is an issue and that's like the Confederate flag and all this kind of stuff. It's embarrassing when you look back on some of these things and you see some of the things that they were saying before and what they're saying now. Anytime Jeff Bezos is willing to give someone millions of dollars, that's a big sign. That's a big sign to people that Van Jones sold out. Big sign. You don't see Jeff Bezos just walking up to some random activist and saying, hey, I want to give you all this money. I want to give you all this, yada, yada. No, they give it to someone that's going to do their bidding. That's how it works.